Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Morgan. Thank you for coming to this new Songs for Butte Mining Camp Brown Bag Talk. This lecture series and concert series was funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, and Rachel is our, I want to say 11th or 12th performer and scholar who has done this program. Tomorrow night is the concert at the Clark Chateau at 7 o'clock in the evening, so you can get tickets online or you can buy them in person at the Clark Chateau. Without further ado, Rachael Cardiello.
Hi everyone. I'm Rachael Cardiello from Helena, Montana. My music is called ZINNIA, and it's usually more of a synth pop, dancey kind of band where I express my innermost feelings. So this whole project and getting to get into research mode and get into other people's lives besides my own was like such a treat for me. I haven't really been in research or lecture mode since I was in university. I went to school for classical music in Victoria, BC. And it just felt so good. This winter I came by and spent 3 hours in the archives. And man, it just felt like heaven. All of my life is so social, like teaching music, teaching art, performing, like it's just constant people, and I just come off of like a family vacation. And so to just spend 3 days with no one talking to me in the archives, and like the wealth of material and photographs here, it just blew me away. I don't know if that many places keep this rich of a history, and it's right at your fingertips. I want my whole family to come by so I can show them everything I found. And I was pretty, I got stretched pretty thin because there's so much that was interesting to me. I was really fascinated by the union struggles between the unions versus the unions going against the mining companies. I thought all those inner workings of idealism and hopes for what could be won for workers, I thought that was really fascinating. And as you probably know, it's a really brutal history. And just looking into the Anaconda protests as well as the Butte protests, like it's such a hard-won battle here. I feel like the mining industry was so vicious for the workers, and I admire how much effort went into trying to make the lives of the workers better. And then the other direction I got super fascinated by was this cookbook. I grew up in Helena, and it's a pretty white state. And I spent a lot of time in Toronto, Canada, which is super multicultural, and you're hearing different languages all the time. And so it's so interesting to me to kind of look further into Butte and just see how multicultural it was. And like just to think about like walking the streets of this town and how many languages you would hear. And they were brand new immigrants, so I feel like the cultures would have been so like dense in history at that point, and less homogenized as they are now. Have you guys seen this cookbook before? Oh my God! Cass, my brother's partner, soon to be my sister, sent me one, and the recipes are amazing, but they give a little history of each culture that was here and where they lived. I'll just give you some of the highlights.
Anaconda just published their cookbook too.
God.
Yeah, this was a bicentennial project from the 1970s.
Okay,
So,
when was it?
It's probably 76 or 77.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh my God, it's like a wealth.
it is.
Because when I first got a tour of the archives, I really got hooked on the map of Butte from back in the day, and one of the archivists gave me like a history of like, this is where the Italians lived, this is where the Yugoslavians lived, and I thought that was so cool. Like our family immigrated to Jersey City, and to hear my dad talk about Jersey City at that point was like every culture had a little neighborhood, and you would walk over here, this is the Jewish neighborhood, over here is the Polish, here's the Italians. And just to think of Montana in that way as well is so fascinating. And who doesn't want to know about food? For instance, so like in the Black chapter, they're saying 1,500 Black Americans were living in this community at one point, which is so different than Montana at this point. So it's like, what a different texture that would have been. The Cornish were known for their singing, coming from the encroachment of the sea into the tin mines of Cornwall. Finnish, coming from the mines in Michigan or directly from Finland, several thousand by 1910. The French early trappers, which I've heard a lot about in Canada because they make up so much of the fabric of Canadian immigration, coming much earlier for beaver trapping. Germans mostly came from a Helena settlement and came more as like farmers and tradesmen and tavern owners. Greeks, they say most have left. Is there any Greek restaurants left here? I think there was some big Greek restaurants. What? I love Greek food. Of course, the Irish is a big part of Butte, which you don't need me to tell you. The Italians, my people. We lived in Meaderville. I'm only a fourth Italian, so I can't really claim that much. They came mostly from mining camps in Michigan. There's a big Jewish population coming from Russia, Poland, Romania, Hungary, Lithuania, cities of Germany. It's just fascinating, like all of these Lebanese, Scandinavians, 6,000 Scandinavians between the 1890s and 1900. Like it just seems like such a mosaic of cultures here. That would have been, I wish I could just like stop by. I don't think I want to live in that time period. But I think just to walk the streets of Butte at that point would be so fascinating. Welsh, Yugoslavian. So yeah, that was part of my deep dive, and I would love to, like, if I had more time, to look into the exact neighborhoods that people lived in. Would be so fascinating. Okay, so then I turned the corner and started getting into the songs, because I'm really fascinated by this whole song project. And at first I assumed that it was the miners while working, that's who is singing. I didn't realize the protest connection quite yet. But I found this book, Songs of the Butte Miners, that talked about how the tradition of singing while you mined was a big part of mining culture, but not at this point that we're looking at. I'm just going to read you a few parts of this. The practice of singing in the mines had pretty well died out. According to the testimony of old-time miners, singing on any large scale does not date beyond the early years of the century. When the real old-time hard rock men was a-singing all the time. These accents are written in, so. The advent of contract mining on a large scale in the mines of Butte admittedly has had much to do with the decline of song underground since about 1920. One old hand summed up the problem this way: since they've gone contracting, they haven't had time for singing. A self-styled genuine tramp miner who worked in the mines of Butte off and on most of his life said that miners sang whenever they could get out from under the ear of the boss. He remembers particularly one shifter who used to come through the drift saying, "Get to work, this ain't no singing school." So I think it was like these group and the contractor, like group mining with the contractors kind of like whipping, just making sure people were getting the most work done, and they didn't see singing as part of that. But especially coming from like Irish, no?
The contractor wasn't like someone that you contracted work out to. He was an individual miner that worked on a contract.
Okay.
And you had, say, this drift to drive, and you and your partner, so you didn't get paid by the day, You got paid by how much rock you moved.
Oh,
And you
okay.
were considered a contract miner, but you were still in the union and you were still just an employee.
And who would be like down in the mining, like, was there a manager? Like someone making sure you were getting the most work done?
They were just bosses.
Yeah, that's who I imagine was kind of saying like no singing. No?
Oh, they might have. I worked down there and I can't imagine any boss telling me I couldn't sing on the job.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that.
yeah. I don't know, that's what this book was implying,
Yeah, well,
but who
that was
the heck
before
knows?
my time even, so I don't know.
And it might have been, I just imagine the difference from like single person mining to like hard rock and with the harder drills. I don't really, this is all new language for me, so I'm making it up as I go.
So the last,
Well,
sorry.
Going way back, you hand drilled.
Yeah,
And you had a guy swinging a hammer and a guy turning the bit.
okay,
And you'd start with short ones and go to longer ones.
yeah,
And, they might have sung a song to keep rhythm, to
yeah,
keep,
that's what I was
to
thinking.
drive the steel.
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I was thinking. And then from there, did the drills become like
It
noisier?
became pneumatic, steam
Okay.
drills and then air powered drills, yeah.
So maybe just the noise level rose to such a degree.
Oh, you couldn't sing around those drills. Oh, you could, nobody'd hear you, but you
Yeah,
They were super loud.
that's
They were like
so fascinating. to me.
jackhammers going up for 8 hours.
Yeah,
So Dublin Gulch implied that the singing was, the songs were kind of protesting. So the bosses were like, no, we're not gonna have any of that kind of,
they already had that association.
so, like when the slaves would sing and they would actually put messages in to, whatever they were gonna do.
Yeah, to rally.
That's what Dublin Gulch, the
Yeah.
last performers, implied that,
Okay,
that's why they said no singing. It's like
yeah.
passing messages. We
Yeah, it
don't
wasn't the
want
singing, it was the message, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The singing was beautiful.
Not the act, it wasn't the act of the singing, it was.
Yeah. Okay. Later it says, an even more revolutionary change in mining had occurred 2 decades earlier with the introduction of the machine drilling process. When the single jack went, so did the cousin Jack, who liked to sing when he hit the steel. He didn't like the noise of the air drills. So that kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I kind of switched gears. I was thinking about like what songs I wanted to do, and the one from this. Does everyone know about this book, The New Songs for Butte Mining Camp? Can I just have a show of hands who've been to these talks before? Yeah.
No.
Okay. And for people who haven't been here, do you know about this book? So this is what the union started issuing these lyric protest books. So I guess today I'm going to be doing a little overview of how these lyric booklets worked and why they came about. And then I'm going to do some back and forth of the songs as they were originally written as hymnals, and then how the protesters took them over with their own message, which I think is just a brilliant form of protest. Been to a lot of protests in Toronto and in Helena, and it just it's hard to get your message through in a way that just doesn't feel exhausting, and to pair it to music that was already popular and already part of the religious fabric of people's lives, I think is really smart. All right. Okay. So, the Industrial Workers of the World was founded in 1905, and they were a singing union between 1910 and 1960. Those were like the heyday years of using music as a form of protest. I pulled this quote, which I thought was great. The songbook, which is this guy, was one of the IWW's most important documents, and songs were sung in numerous situations around hobo campfires, in boxcars, in wobbly halls, in the streets, on picket lines, at strike rallies, in court, on the way to jail, and in jail. The songs were a crucial aid in recruiting new members, and they were important in building a sense of fellowship and in keeping spirits up in hard situations. Paul Guerin writes that a mixed group of hobos sitting around a campfire would be more likely to sing wobbly songs than blues, country, or vaudeville. This tells us something about the popularity these songs enjoyed. The song booklets first came about after some protests in Spokane, Washington. The IWW was trying to get rid of job sharks, who were like hiring agencies that would offer short-term employment that wasn't very stable income for families. The IWW started a union hiring hall to kind of go against this, and that was trashed and burned down by company goons. So they started doing street speeches on soapboxes near the hiring agencies to just try to like rally support and to try to get people to boycott these agencies. And then the companies would send out, they would hire the Salvation Army, which the IWW called the Starvation Army, to bring trumpets and drums to drown out the protesters in these soapbox speeches. And so then, in like a brilliant turn, the union turned around and said, okay, we're just gonna sing along with the trumpets. And so they would have this, everyone would have a booklet, and you would just start singing along with these, the Salvation Army brass band. And they would just ultimately like amplify what you were saying. The Little Red Songbook, and most of the lyrics in this are paired to religious psalms. So they would say like, sing it to Amazing Grace, or whatever psalm people would say. I saw a quote comparing like this use of lyrical content, like pairing it with a popular song, to this movement, this art movement of the 1950s called détourné, or it's a French pronunciation I'm not sure about. But there's this group called the Situationists that was a very like political art group, and détourné translates to not direct or devious or not straightforward, and it's a way of like taking a popular media that most people know and twisting the meaning to kind of go against using the original meaning. It's kind of a criticism of that original meaning. And this was super helpful in the movement because many of the union songwriters were not like trained in writing melodies or writing down like sheet music. Plus, most of the union workers probably would not have been able to read that music if they'd written a fresh melody. So this was a way to get instant recognition. So any worker that was protesting would already know the hymnal. They would already know the melody and just be able to slap on the words. And it stuck with people more because it was just popular music. Like it was like the fabric of their world at that point. And then the secondary use is that it criticized the original. So like, I'm gonna play a few examples. Like in the Sweet By and By, it's all about like, don't worry if it's hard right now, you're gonna like have a great time in heaven. And this is saying like, hey, like your life should not be this hard. Putting it with the protesters. And you'll see the difference, I think is just so brilliant to like kind of awaken people to this idea of like, your life doesn't have to be such a struggle. Like you can expect better things for you and your family, like right now while you're still alive. You don't have to wait to be in heaven. Okay, I thought maybe I'd pass this around if anyone wants to look at some of the lyrics in there. Has anyone heard the song In the Sweet By and By? I love Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton covered it, which are my favorite versions. So I'm going to just sing a little bit of the original and then show you the lyrics that were paired with it. meet on that beautiful shore in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore. Alright, so that's the original. Okay, and then, where are these new ones? Okay. Long-haired creatures come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie. It's just like, it's pretty like straightforward. And then this one even gets into the Starvation Army. And the Starvation Army, they play. And they sing and they clap and the Starvation Army, they play. And they sing and they clap and they pray till they get all your coins on the drum. When they tell you, then they tell you when you're on the bum. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. Thanks. And then another song this happened with is What a Friend I Have in Jesus. So this was originally written in 1855 by an Irish guy named Joseph M. Scriven as a poem. He'd immigrated to Canada and he was writing a poem to comfort his mother. It was later put to a hymnal tune by Charles Crozat Converse in 1868. So this had already been making its ways through like the hymnal landscape and was like very popular in people's worlds. So here's the original. I was listening to this Alan Jackson version and it's very satisfyingly country. Really good. I grew up in a very like classical and Joni Mitchell type house, and our mom pretty much outlawed country in the household, and so I feel like country's been my like rebellion. What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we fill our Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. And then we get a turnaround by this guy, John Brill, turned into a protest song called Dump the Bosses Off Your Back. Are you poor, forlorn, and hungry? Are there lots of things you lack? Is your life made up of misery? Then dump the bosses off your back. Are your clothes all patched and tattered? Are you living in a shack? Would you have your troubles scattered? Then dump the bosses off your back. Are you almost split asunder? Loaded like a long-eared jack? Ooh, why don't you buck the thunder and dump the bosses off your back? Oh, the agonies you suffer, you can end with one good whack. Stiffen up your ornery duffer and dump the bosses off your back. So that kind of brings me to the song I ended up covering. And I think why I wanted to do this one is it had the original. Some of the songs will say what hymnal they were paired with. This one I ended up finding the sheet music too, because this one is not. This was not a traditional hymn. This just had a new composer. He took a poem written by an unknown proletarian, and then von Liebig just wrote a melody for it. That was in one of the booklets that I found. So this is "We Have Fed You All for 1,000 Years." The lyrics of this just immediately pulled me in. It's so dramatic and weighty and dark. And I pointedly, what I try to do with the project is just take the lyrics and write my own version in the style of my music, which is like kind of synthy with like a dancier beat and sort of a dark take on melody. And so I wanted to just see what these lyrics would look like in my music out of curiosity. So I didn't play the original melody first. And only in the last few days have I gone and looked at this and be like, oh, it's like quite a jolly, uplifting melody. It's all major chords. And I just think at that time, probably the uplifting music was really necessary in these battles, in these like fights, just to get people to rally and get the tune stuck in your head and like have a joyous way to express such hard things. But yeah, in the modern day, I took it back to the dark place. But here's the original. Gotta kind of. Okay. We have fed you. Oh, it's also related to the song "The Worker's Answer." I saw the same lyrics kind of in both songs, and I'm not sure what that history is, but I like them both. We have fed you all for 1,000 years, and you hail us still, and you hail us still unfed. Though there's never $1 of all your wealth, but marks the workers dead. We have yielded our best to give you rest, and you lie on crimson wool. And if blood be the price of all your wealth, good God, we have paid in full. There is never a mind blown skyward now, but we're buried alive. from the days when you chained us in your fields to the strike a week ago. You have taken our lives, our babies and our wives, and we're told it's your legal share. And if blood be the price of your lawful wealth, good God, we have paid it fair. So that's the original, and I'm gonna kind of end this talk with my take on those words, and then if you guys have any questions, I'm 3 days worth of an expert, so I think other people in this room are the ones you should ask, but I will receive any questions you have. And it's really been a treat for me to be part of this. I think Butte is one of the most interesting places I've ever been, and I like the people who live here. Okay, so here is, we have fed you all for 1,000 years. I was trying to tap into the kind of desperation that must have been felt writing these lyrics, of just being like, and I mean, I think it's still a good anthem for the 99% who, you know, and you can see that money is being pulled to a certain few over and over and over. That narrative has not gone away since this time. We have fed you all for 1,000 years. Crimson wool, and if blood be the price of all your wealth, good God, we have paid in full. There is never a mind blown skyward now, but we're buried alive for you. There is never a wreck drifts shoreward now, but we are its ghastly crew. We have fed you all for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years, and you held us still unfed. Though there's never a dollar of all your wealth, of all your wealth, but marks the worker's dead. We have fed you all for 1,000 years, but that was our doom, you know, from the days when you chained us in your fields to the strike a week ago. You have taken our lives, our babies and our wives, but we're told it's your legal share. And if blood be the price of your lawful wealth, good God, we have paid it fair. We have fed you all for 1,000 years.